Hello, how is everyone doing today? I'm here with special guest Walter Block because it's that time of the month. That's why Walter is wearing a red shirt. He is an Austrian economist, teaches at Loyola University. He is the author of such books as Defending the Undefendable, 1, 2, and 3. Also, from what I've heard, is the co-author of two great articles coming up, Don't Steal, the Government Hates Competition, and Free So I Can Take Your Stuff, which from what I've heard is co-authored by one of the smartest, funniest, humblest, and most attractive people on the planet. How are you doing today?
Pretty good. First of all, Defending 3 isn't out yet, but I'm working on it. And second of all, you should tell your audience who this co-author is.
Oh, yes, me.
Okay, we've got that clear.
Yeah. I remember telling someone about your book, and they said, it should be called Defending the Indefensible.
That's true, but that's only if you understand the English language. That's what I meant to say, but I'm from Brooklyn. What do you expect? And but then again, none of the other people, like the publisher and nobody else, said that there's no such word. So I guess I invented a word. Sue me.
All right. Yeah. Hey, Anthony Burgess did it. Shakespeare did it. It's nothing wrong with that.
There we go.
Okay.
Me,
yeah.
Anthony and Bill.
Right. Yeah, I invent words too. Nothing wrong with that. And also, no one can get upset with you because they don't know what you're saying. One of the benefits.
Somehow people get upset with me anyway. I can't understand why.
Yeah. So there's a bunch of things I want to talk about. First, and I want your opinion, I guess. I want your opinion as Walter Block more than I want your opinion as a libertarian. And that is, there was a debate that I heard recently between Jeffrey Tucker and Jack Hunter, and that was, what's the best way to achieve liberty? And Jeffrey Tucker said, and I think agree with him, is that it takes a lot of money and it takes a lot of resources and a lot of energy to invest in politicians. And if you look at history, they're just liars who are going to say whatever they want to get into office, and your time is better spent creating something productive than to waste your time and energy among these people who are just going to lie to you and disappoint you. And so I guess I want to know your thoughts on that.
Well, I have a two-word refutation for that. Ron Paul. That's a two-word refutation. I would say that of the two people who have converted more people to libertarianism than any other two people, it would be Ayn Rand and Ron Paul. And I revere Murray Rothbard and Ludwig von Mises, but they didn't so much impact the general public as they impacted you and me, and cognoscenti about libertarianism and Austrian economics. But in terms of numbers, sheer numbers of people who were introduced to libertarianism, Ayn Rand and Ron Paul stand head and shoulders above any other two people, and maybe the third best might be Milton Friedman, I'm not sure, but he's a long way back in the pack. So to say that politics is no good as a way to promote liberty, this is a blatant refutation of that. Ron Paul. He was a politician for, 20, 30 years or so, or whatever, 10 or 12 congressional 2-year shots. And he's magnificent. Okay, I don't agree with him on 100%. There's 0.0001% where Ron and I disagree. But what the heck? I disagree with myself more than that. So I'm sort of a skeptic on this. I don't know that there's any one right way to promote liberty. There's politics, there's think tanks like the Mises Institute or Jeffrey Tucker's new thing called Liberty Me. There's what you and I are now doing, a Skype, Hangout, Google Hangout. There's what I'm doing as a professor of economics, trying to convert my kids to good economics and economic freedom. And I'm happy that many of my former students are now professors and are now continuing the baton that I handed to them, that Murray handed to me, Murray Rothbard. There's the Free State Project, which I'm a fan of. People go there to New Hampshire, which is a poorly populated state, and can have some sort of an effect. And I think that's good. There's seasteading. David Friedman's son, Milton Friedman's grandson, Patrick Friedman, I think was involved in the setting that up, trying to get a new country, a floating country out in the ocean somewhere. There's a lot of think tanks. I used to work for the Fraser Institute in Canada, which wasn't as libertarian as I'd like, but it's vaguely free enterprise, as is Cato or Reason. There's probably in each of the 50 states, there's at least one think tank that is vaguely free enterprise or better. Probably in Washington, D.C., there are 50 more. There are magazines, journals, people can sing songs. I don't know. Do movies. Atlas Shrugged movie wasn't as much of a success as I would have liked, but there are just so many ways of doing it. My advice is, forget about what's the most efficient. Just do what's the most fun. And if the most fun for you is being a journalist or a member of the pulpit, a minister or a rabbi or something. Hayek used to call it secondhand dealers in ideas. You see, a doctor is a very bright guy and a physicist is a very bright guy. And if they were libertarians, their job wouldn't require them to talk about liberty, because their job is physics or medicine. Whereas a journalist or a minister or a lawyer is closer, so you'd have a better shot at promoting liberty on the job. Another way is become a businessman, become very rich, and then support all sorts of libertarian activities. So I'm a Maoist on this. Let 1,000 flowers bloom. Everybody should promote liberty in the best way that they think will succeed, and whatever is the most fun for them. I have a co-author, Bill Barnett. He and I have co-authored 50 or 60 articles. And usually we've got 2 or 3 or 4 of them sort of half done. And he'll say, well, which one should I work on now? And I'll say, whichever is the most fun, because we're supposed to have fun in this life. I don't speak as a libertarian. Libertarianism is limited to what just law is. But, as people, we want to have fun. We want to have good, happy lives. And it would be nice to promote liberty. You might ask another question, a follow-up question. I'll put it in your mouth if you agree with it. And that is, why, if we have so many bright people like you and I, and so many geniuses like Ayn Rand and Murray Rothbard and Ron Paul, why are we doing so badly?
Oh, that I can help answer. Yeah.
Okay, well, I'll interview you then. What's your answer to that one?
Well, I think there's a bunch of things. One, I think that, and I've noticed this about a lot of libertarians, is that people are not persuaded by the arguments so much as the character of the people making the argument, right? People are way more likely to listen to a person who's charismatic, irrespective of what the person is, who the person is. And I think that there are a lot of libertarians who come across as morally superior or have an air of, oh, everyone's a brainwashed idiot but me. And that, I think, can turn a lot of people off. I think you have to be humble. And I think if you have this air of moral superiority, which I've noticed a lot of libertarians unfortunately possess, people are not going to want to listen to what you say. I also agree sort of with Ron Paul that you have to be successful. No, like if there's a person who's unemployed or is a loser, no one's going to want to listen to you no matter what your argument is, because people are like, you can't even get your own life, it seems, on track. Why should I take what you say seriously? Well, also, the government has much better PR than we do.
Slightly better. Well, I think you're making some good points, and I'd like to elaborate on some where I don't fully agree. First of all, yes, charisma is good. Who could be against charisma? But you can't get a charisma shot. There's no charisma pill. Either you have it or you don't have it. And I would say Ron Paul didn't really have it. He was not charismatic. I mean, the speeches he gave were very calm and low-key. He was not as good as Donald Trump, say, as being charismatic. He was
better than Ayn Rand.
Ayn Rand was charismatic.
Oh, so, really? Wow, I guess we disagree.
So. And also, Ayn Rand was the sort of person who would say, you're a jerk if you're not a libertarian. Well, she wouldn't say you're a jerk if you're not a libertarian, but she'd say you're a jerk if you're not an objectivist. And yet she succeeded wildly whereas Ron Paul didn't have that. So as an Austrian economist, which we both are, we're subjectivists. We can't. There's no objective way to do this. I mean, again, I return to Uncle Mao, 1,000 flowers bloom. There are probably 1,000 different ways to do it. But to answer my own question, why is it, given that we have Ayn Rand and Ron, Ayn Rand, her book, Atlas Shrugged, came out in 1957. It's still selling I don't know what, 100,000, 250,000 books. And this is, almost a century later. Well, not quite, but 3/4 of a century. Half a century. I'm bad at math here. We had Ayn Rand, we have Ron Paul, we had Murray Rothbard, Ludwig von Mises, and then hundreds of people like you and I of lesser abilities. I don't mean to put us down, but I've met Murray Rothbard, and we're no Murray Rothbard. But there are hundreds of us, thousands of us, and yet, the Libertarian candidate this year will probably get the usual 1.5% of the vote. And look who's running for office. You got Bernie and Hillary, and you got Trump and Cruz and what's that guy from Florida? Rubio. Yeah. None of them approach libertarianism within a mile. So why aren't we succeeding? Or why are we doing so pathetically badly? Well, let me rephrase that. When I first met Murray Rothbard in around 66, maybe 65, I asked him how many libertarians were there in the world. And you know what he said? 25. 25 libertarians in the whole world. Well, if you look at, how well we're doing now compared to 25 libertarians in the whole world, there are 25 libertarians in every little duckburg of a town of 10,000 people. So we're doing marvelously well in that way. But on the other hand, look at the other way, we're not doing so well. Gary Johnson might well be the Libertarian candidate, and he's a pretty good guy, and he'll get maybe if he gets 2%, everyone's going to be applauding wildly, because that'll be double what the Libertarian Party ever got before. So why are we doing so badly? And my answer is sociobiology. Namely, we're hardwired toward benevolence, but not toward appreciation for markets. And libertarianism, I won't say libertarianism consists of nothing else but markets or free enterprise. It consists of more, but an awful lot of libertarianism is the Adam Smith's invisible hand. The idea that you can selfishly try to produce whatever it is, fountain pens, and in so doing, you are led as if by an invisible hand to produce what the people want. So benevolence comes out of selfishness, which is sort of wonderful. But we're not hardwired for that. Trade only goes back maybe 10,000 years, when we discovered some tribes that had 50 members and they had 3,000 pots, from which we deduced that they were using those pots to trade, because 10 miles away there was another tribe of 50 people and they had 10,000, I don't know what, spears or something else. And that's sort of when trade started, whereas benevolence goes back to when we were mammals. The mother mammal takes care of the baby mammal. And so I every time I get a new freshman class and I mention the minimum wage or price gouging or anything like that, they're viscerally appalled at markets. So I think it's some sort of biological thing that we're contending against.
But doesn't that make it utopian? Like, if we're hardwired, when why would we ever approach a libertarian?
Well, you see, some of us have a mutation, like you and I and the people I've mentioned here who are libertarians. And the mutation isn't so much that we were born with it, but that we were born with the ability to be open to it. I mean, you weren't always a libertarian. I wasn't. I was converted.
No, I was. I would
say, well, you're a weirdo. I wasn't. I'm glad I can call you a weirdo, and we just laugh because we're good enough friends to know that,
You only insult the ones you love, which
right.
makes most people on the planet.
Well, that's not true. Donald Trump insults people that he doesn't love.
That's fine. Maybe there are exceptions. You're right.
Right.
I'm just
but know that when I call you a weirdo, it's a friendly remark. Everything is a friendly remark between us.
All right.
But the point is that okay, it's utopian in the sense that we're not going to get liberty in our lifetimes. Fine. But does that mean we should stop doing it? No. because doing it is so much fun. I can't imagine anything else that's 1/1,000,000th as much fun as promoting liberty, whether through philosophy or economics, sociology, politics, whatever. So I'm not saying don't try. I'm saying try. And if my life is an example, apart from sleeping and eating and doing a few other things, all I do is promote liberty. I love it. It's the most amazing, magnificent thing to do is to promote liberty. Well, what could be better? Okay, so we don't succeed. I'm still having fun. I'm not going to change. And look, in 500 years, well, maybe 5,000 years, biology can change. And maybe one day we'll get liberty. And in the meantime, we just do our best. But I think, this is sort of, you don't want to have burnout. You don't want to have libertarians who try, and now they've tried for 5 years and there's no more liberty than when they started, and they say, oh, the hell with it, I'll take up bicycling or, I don't know, chess or something like that. So if people go into it with the expectation that we're not going to succeed in some ways, although in other ways, I mean, we started out with 25 people in 1965, and now maybe we have 25 million in the whole world who are libertarians, or 5 million. Well, maybe in 10 years we'll have 50 million or 100 million out of 7 billion. It's still very small, but I think that if people realize that it's sort of like the rock of Sisyphus, you push the rock up the mountain and then it keeps coming down, you keep pushing it up. If they don't have this expectation that liberty is within our grasp, within the next electoral cycle, in 4 years, I don't know, Rand Paul is going to run and he'll be just like Ron Paul and he'll become president. Not going to happen. If Rand were like that, he wouldn't win because we're not ready for that. So I think if we give people a false consciousness that we're about to succeed and then we don't succeed in 4 or 8 years, then they're going to get burned out. Whereas if we look at it realistically, namely that we're not going to succeed for 5,000 years, if ever, but we're going to try and try and try because it's so much fun and it's the only just thing to do is to promote liberty. Then if people go into it with that attitude, they're not going to get burned out. They're not going to be bitterly disappointed. They're going to say whenever we have a backslide, well, that's the human condition. We'll keep trying.
Yeah. No, I sort of agree. I agree with what I like to call the libertarian slut approach. Do everything, see what works.
I love it. Libertarian slut. Magnificent.
No. But, I mean, in my opinion...
Oh, wait a second. You should have given me a trigger warning. I'm highly indignant and highly insulted. How dare you?
I don't give a shit.
Oh, okay. Okay, slut, keep going.
Yeah, I know. I saw one of these videos where someone's like, saying God bless you is a microaggression because it offends atheists. I'm like, I'm offended that you think I'm that sensitive.
Right, yes.
How ridiculous. But, so one of the things, I became a libertarian, I think, at about the age of 14 or 15. And for me, what made me a libertarian was not reading a book, but sort of I was bullied throughout elementary school and high school. I know it's hard to imagine. And because in my opinion, and this is where I think I disagree with a lot of anarchists. A lot of anarchists act like the state is this aggressive entity that imposes its will upon people and everyone else is just their victims, where my belief is that the state really represents what the masses want. And to me, I have as much hatred against the mob and the masses as I do against the state. Okay. And the state is really mainly just a mirror for the masses' evil desire.
Can't both be true?
Huh?
Can't both be true? I agree with both statements, although you seem to think that because the second statement is correct, the first one isn't.
Well, I don't know. A lot of anarchists act as if, and maybe I'm wrong, but a lot of anarchists act as if that it's only the state which is guilty and that the masses are just its innocent victims. And I disagree with that.
I agree with you. I disagree with the anarchists who say that it's only the state, because the state is the creature of the masses of the people. So both are bad guys.
Right. And so, one of the things that I've noticed, when I was bullied throughout elementary school and high school, is I was never bullied by a single individual. It wasn't like one person bullied me. I was always bullied by the group. And in fact, a lot of the people who bullied me, one-on-one would be very nice to me, right? And that sort of showed me in my personal life that people sort of like to conform, and that people, in my opinion, are always worse in groups. And also, you know, in my life, all the authority figures in my life didn't follow their own rules. You know, my parents would be upset if I would curse, they would curse. I had teachers who, if your cell phone ring in class, they would kick you out of class, but if their cell phone ring, they would talk in it for 10 minutes. And, you know, I sort of agree. Abraham Lincoln once said that the best way to get rid of a bad law, is to enforce it harshly. And I agree. I think what creates anarchists more than anything are abusive governments, more than anarchists promoting liberty. It's sad, but I think that's the truth. I think that a cop beating the shit out of someone persuades more people to be against cops than someone writing some article, because one is a personal thing that they can relate to, and one is just this abstraction that's an intellectual exercise that they don't react to as well. So in my opinion, and sort of sad, I think that the best way to promote liberty is to have the government just be as oppressive as possible until people are turned off.
Well, we certainly don't want to advocate oppressive government. We want to advocate less oppressive government. But, you know, again, I return to my subjectivism. You're right. Probably 95% of the people will be more viscerally impacted by a cop beating the crap out of somebody than by some beautiful essay by Murray Rothbard. But there are some people who will be more converted by that. And also, sometimes when the cops beat the crap out of somebody, it's not so bad because the guy deserves it. And the let him loose courts are going to let him loose anyway. And, you know, in the old days, you used to have this thing called nightstick justice. When the cops would beat the crap out of somebody, hopefully not for a victimless crime, but for a victim crime. And we had more peace. And nowadays, the cops dare not touch criminals because, you know, we have cameras and this and that, and they get fired and all. And paradoxically, the murder rate goes up when the cops are afraid to do anything. Now, look, I'm not a big fan of government cops, but fair is fair. Sometimes they do good, like when they stop a murder or a rape or, you know, a victim crime. And other times they're horrible when they stop victimless crimes. So I think we're overgeneralizing if we're against all cops or against all cops beating the crap out of people.
Well, if the option was no government police at all, or government police stopping the violent crime, I would say no government police at all.
Well, I agree. I'm against government police because if we didn't have government police, we'd have private police. But suppose we wouldn't have private police. Isn't it true that sometimes what a government cop does is a good thing, like when he stops a rape?
Yeah, a broken clock is right twice a day.
Well, okay, fair enough. Twice a day is pretty good.
So for 2 hours out of 24, cops are okay.
Well, I don't know what the proportion is. And I fear that you're right, that it's 12 to 1 that they do bad. I mean, they promote the minimum wage law, they promote the law against the prostitution, law against the drugs, you know, all tax law. They promote tax law. They maybe 12 to 1 is a reasonable proportion. But the one we have to acknowledge is good, because every once in a while they do stop a murder or a rape or a theft or something like that. And apart from how they were financed, which is, you know, through coercion, taxes, we have to applaud that act in isolation out of context.
Right.
Because that's what a private cop presumably would be doing. So 2 hours out of 24 isn't so bad. At least they're doing some good.
I agree, but I look at the total, like, you know, someone was telling me, you know, like a cop will, you know, kill a school shooter, and someone will say, now do you think all cops are bad? And I'm like, yeah, he was just good in that moment. I look at the aggregate of what you do. I'm sure Hitler was very nice to his dog. I don't care.
Hitler had a lot of good things. The New York Times would never misquote me, but you know, he was against cigarettes. He was for good eating good food, you know, vegetables or something like that. And he patted his dog, you know. So we have to, if we're going to be good social scientists, we have to acknowledge the truth. The truth is our God, if you will. And every once in a while, a cop does something good. So even when it's beating the crap out of somebody, because if you didn't beat out the idea with a lot of criminals, they have high time preference, very impatient. And if the punishment is 6 months down the road, it doesn't mean much to them. Whereas if the punishment is 6 seconds after the crime, it means a lot to them. Namely, they'll stop. So I'm not as bitterly opposed to all government cops as perhaps many anarcho-libertarians are. I'm trying to look at it accurately, rationally.
Right. I mean, I like I've said to someone, if the only way to prevent murder was having a government stop murderers, I'd say let murder be legal. Because government kills way more people than murderers, and doing a cost-benefit analysis, I'd rather have murderers roam the street because they commit far fewer than having a government.
I agree with you entirely, and the statistics are, and I was able to convert a friend of mine on this very basis. There's Rummel, there's Conquest, and then there's a guy named Courtois, and he has 5 co-authors who I don't remember. And what they do is they calculate the statistics on how many murders governments created in the 20th century, and it's I'm not sure what the number is, something like either 175 million or 260 million. It used to be 175 million, and they revised it up to 260. And they don't even take into account traffic fatalities, which is a pet thing of mine because I wrote a book on war. No, this is just governments killing their own people.
Right.
And it's up to 260 million, and that's without traffic fatalities, of which I blame government also. So even 260 is an underestimate.
Right. Or the FDA denying life-saving drugs.
Yes, they don't calculate that, and you're quite right, and that's a good point. So you're absolutely right when you say that we'd rather have murderers roam free than governments, because for every one person that a murderer, a Blood or a Crips or a Mafia kills, the government is killing, I don't know, thousands. Hundreds of thousands.
Right.
So, we have no disagreement on that.
Yeah, I just wrote an article today saying abortion is murder and should be legal. And one of my arguments was that I would rather have, the occasional abortion than increasing the police state. And so, to me, the lesser evil is an increase in government power. And therefore, let's find alternative ways to reduce abortion beyond increasing the power of the state.
Well, so, you know that I've written a lot about abortion.
Yeah.
And I'm probably, if I weren't so lazy, I'd already have a book out on this. I'm going to do that in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, Birthing the Unbirthable.
Great, I love it. That's a magnificent title. Thank you. I should have mentioned my Rhodes book. I should have called it Privatizing the Unprivatizable. I don't know what was the matter with me.
I will title your books from now on.
Yes, you the man. In any case, the way I see abortion, if you want to talk about that for a little bit.
Go ahead.
See, the problem with the word abortion is it really means 2 things. One, it means eviction, taking the fetus out of the womb without killing it. And 2, it means killing it. It's similar to unions, labor unions. They do 2 things. One of which is legitimate and the other of which is illegitimate. The legitimate thing they do is they foment mass quits. And the idea if one person can quit, if one person can't quit, he's a slave. The only problem with slavery, hear this New York Times, is you couldn't quit. If you could quit, it would be impotent to really hurt anyone. Oh, you got the whip, I'm quitting. Fine. So a mass quit, just because I quit at the same time as you quit. If I have a right to quit, you have a right to quit, so we can all quit at the same time. Whereas in the early days of antitrust law, that what they would do is use antitrust against unions just for mass quitting, which would be improper. Okay, but the second thing that unions do is not only do they quit, but then they try to beat up scabs or replacement workers. Not sure why scabs isn't like an N word for black people or a K word for Jews, but for some reason it's okay to say scabs. So the libertarian view on union activity is, well, it depends on what they do. Well, that's exactly the libertarian analysis of abortion. It depends upon what you're talking about. Is it eviction or is it killing? And abortion is both. And we have to distinguish between the two, just as we want to distinguish between a mass quit and beating up scabs.
Right.
So the woman has a right to evict. And if we adopt evictionism, at one fell swoop, all babies in the last trimester will be safe. No more partial birth abortions for them, because the partial birth abortion means you kill first and then you pull the baby out. You just pull the baby out and the baby can survive. You see, what the feminists want is not only to evict, but they want to make sure that that man's baby never sees the light of day. Well, they have the right to evict, but they have no right to murder.
And half of that child doesn't even belong to them anyway.
Well,
right? They're more like UPS. I know that's offensive and not politically correct, but half of that is the man's sperm, and you're a partial owner at best.
Well, I would say more like 99%, because not only does woman give the egg, but she gives the womb for 9 months.
So what? If the UPS delivery truck comes, I don't say, I have a right to that package. Look, I'm not saying that a woman doesn't have a right to her child. You would do 50%. It's made up of the sperm and the egg. I
don't think it's 50%. I think that if there's a dispute as to which one gets the baby, now in the old days, we were never sure who the father was. We were always sure who the mother was. Nowadays, with DNA, we can be certain who the father is. But it seems to me, based on libertarian homesteading theory, that the mother and the father each produce one thing, the sperm or the egg, but then the mother does all the work. She houses the baby. She homesteads the baby. So I think that if there's a dispute between the mother and the father as to who gets to adopt the baby,
right. So if a married couple, the husband works for a living, does he own 90% of the assets?
Well, it depends on the contract, but forget about married couples for a moment. Two people have a baby, and they're not married, and now the husband wants custody and the wife wants custody. And assuming that neither one is a drunkard, or neither one is going to abuse the child, or whatever, any complication like that, it seems to me that it's not a 50% thing. I hate to be a feminist here, but I think that based on libertarian homesteading theory, the woman gets way more than 50% of the shot, because she's housed that baby for 9 months, plus half of the biological contribution. But what about the fact that she's been marching around for 9 months with that baby inside her? Surely that should count for something. I think it should count for a lot. So if I were a judge, what was that in the Bible? There was a dispute between two women as to which one owned the baby. And they said, the judge said, cut the baby in half. And one of the women said, no, don't cut the baby in half. Let her have him. Well, then the judge figured out that was the person. Well, forget about that. But, if it's a man versus a woman, and he's the father and she's the mother, my vote goes with the mother. But getting back to abortion versus eviction, 1/3 of all babies are now saved. And by the way, this issue of abortion not only divides the general populace, but even divides libertarianism, even divides libertarians. Murray Rothbard is pro-choice. Ron Paul is pro-life. You can't get two better, more highly credentialed libertarians than Murray and Ron, and yet they're at opposite ends of this dispute. So I think that my idea here, and I think it's original with me, one of my original contributions to libertarianism, is that the solution for this is eviction, neither pro-life nor pro-choice. Now, I'm sort of pro-life in my own personal thoughts. Yeah. I like people. I'm pro-human beings, and killing people is not a good idea. Although, see, for the last trimester, the evictionism is the same as pro-life. But for the first 6 months, evictionism is the same as pro-choice. Namely, the woman can evict, and in the first trimester, that baby is toast. And yet I think she has the right to evict, not to kill, but the baby will die. However, medical technology is on our side, because you see, even though we're not going to get libertarianism in 10 years, in 10 years, instead of the baby being safeguarded in the 7th, 8th, and 9th month, the baby might be safeguarded in the 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th month, and then 25 years later in the 5th month. So as medical technology improves, evictionism will more and more likely to be pro-life. So my hope is that all pro-life people will adopt this, because right now we pro-lifers are losing. I mean, pro-choice is the law of the land, and not only the law of the land, but with Obama, they even subsidize this out of tax revenue. Yeah. So the whole
they're hypocritical, I think, because it's only pro-choice. First of all, most of these people are only pro-choice when it comes to abortion, and they're not even pro-choice when it comes to abortion. They want to make the man pay for the kid. They want to, so it's pro my choice, fuck everyone else, right? My right. His responsibility.
Like, take the case of, I'm on a university campus, as are you, and every once in a while there's a rape, and, this idea of a rape culture. I don't think there's more rapes on campus than off campus. That's a whole other issue. But every once in a while some girl gets molested, and what I wrote is, let's have a pistol shooting team for girls. And, in the Olympics, in the Summer Olympics, they have pistol shooting. In the Winter Olympics, they have biathlon, where you ski a little and then you shoot a rifle and then you ski some more. Well, if we had a team like that at most college campuses, the girls would be safer. I mean, a rapist wouldn't know who's got a gun in her pocketbook or in a pocket. And the gun is the great equalizer. So here the feminists are so supposedly pro-choice. Well, how about letting girls have guns? No, we can't allow that. And they're supposed to be equality oriented. Men and women are equal. Well, right now, men and women aren't equal. Men are stronger than women. Whereas with a gun, a little girl of 5'2" and 105 pounds is the equal of Mike Tyson, or any professional boxer with a gun. They're equal. They each have a gun. Whereas right now, the little girl is, not the equal of a big, strong man. So the feminists are hypocritical in every which way you can imagine.
Well, I think it's also more about hating men. I remember I was at some speech and someone said some idiotic nonsense. We have to treat men not to rape. So I said, should we treat black people not to steal and Muslims not to blow people up? Because the assumption is that all men are rapists. I mean, how's that not offensive?
Well, yeah, of course.
All men are rapists, and we should teach them not to rape. No one taught me not to rape. I rape the exact number of people I want to rape. That's 0.
Absolutely. We're libertarians. We certainly oppose rape. This reminds me of a joke. A man and a woman are going out fishing, and the man is an avid fisher, and the woman, she's reading a book. And then what happens is the man swims to shore. And now the woman is sitting in the boat with a whole bunch of fishing rods, and the sheriff comes along, the water sheriff. He says, "I'm going to have to arrest you for fishing," and she says, "Look, I'm reading a book. Don't arrest me for fishing. I'm just reading a book." And the sheriff, the water sheriff, I forget what you call him, aquatic sheriff, he says, "But you have all the equipment. Look, you have fishing rods all over the place." So the woman says, "Well, look, if you arrest me for fishing, I'm going to call rape. I'm going to charge you with rape." And he says, "What? Rape? I didn't rape you." He said, "But you have all the equipment."
A friend of mine said, when a person's getting raped, you're not supposed to scream rape. You're supposed to scream like fire or something, because people are supposed to come. But he's like, instead, I think you should scream free hot dogs.
I love it. That's magnificent. That's a good one. Well, we have 2 rape jokes, probably politically incorrect, but
I heard a joke. It's not a rape joke, but it's good. How many Austrian economists does it take to change a light bulb?
0. They leave it to market forces.
You can't make quantitative predictions.
That's good. How many Jewish mothers does it take to change a light bulb?
They'll sit in the dark.
That's it. They just sit in the dark. Now, for the finale here, how many feminists does it take to change a light bulb?
None.
That's not funny.
Right, yes. Or how many rabbis does it take to change a light bulb?
How many?
Some say 2, some say 3. Yeah.
That's a good one.
Yeah. There was just a Donald Trump one. How many Donald Trump supporters does it take to change the light bulb? Look, we understand the light bulb's broken, and some people say it's a light bulb dead, and the light bulb's going to be better than it's ever been before.
That's a good one. Well, look, I promised you an hour, and we're coming up to the hour. We've only got another 5 or 8 minutes or so. So, one last question, or one last discussion.
Been that far already? Okay. Sure. I'm a bit surprised there's a bunch of stuff I wanted to ask you. Well, I guess one thing I wanted to ask you was one of my professors now is Daniel Klein, and he wrote this article, and I know you rebutted it, about overall liberty and direct liberty, and I guess I wanted your thoughts, because I said to him, I think you misunderstand what libertarianism is about, because libertarianism doesn't tell people how they should act. You know, there may be a case where I think it's in my interest to steal an apple so I don't starve to death. And libertarianism doesn't say that you shouldn't steal an apple. It only says what are the repercussions from stealing the apple.
Precisely.
Yeah.
I agree with you. I'm having a lot of trouble with him. He wrote an article. I forget what journal he published it. I wrote a rebuttal in another journal. And I said, look, Dan, go, write another article. And then I'll write one. And eventually, you know, one of the other side will change, or we'll both agree to disagree. And eventually we'll get some sort of closure. Instead, he wants to have a public debate on this, and it's hard to get a public debate. And I'm interested. I'm willing. I'll come to George Mason and debate him. He's got to pay me, but that's, you know, I mean, not him personally, but, you know, I got to be paid my honorarium and travel costs and all. But it's a lot easier. Just tell him to write an article saying, you know, Block says these 5 things, and I agree with one of them, and these 4 are wrong, or whatever he wants to write. But I don't understand that. I'm having the same problem with Mark Skousen. Mark, what happened is Bill Barnett and I wrote this blistering attack on the Hayekian triangle. And if there's anyone nowadays who's using the Hayekian triangle, it's Roger Garrison and Mark Skousen. And it's a 90-page article with very, very minute technical things about the structure of production and the Austrian triangle. And I said, you know, Mark, you don't like it? Write an article. Oh, I have to tell you Roger Garrison's reaction. This is precious. What Roger Garrison said is, triangles yesterday, triangles today, triangles tomorrow, triangles forever. Sort of like George Wallace of Alabama, you know, segregation today, tomorrow, forever, which is very charming. But I tell you, if somebody wrote a blistering attack on what I had made my life's work, libertarianism, I would reply. And Roger is sort of like, and Mark Skousen to a lesser degree, his whole career has been one of promoting and explaining and expounding upon the Hayekian triangle.
So what's your critique? Just curious.
Oh, there are 14 different critiques. You know, first of all, Austrians don't do straight lines, and the what do you call it? The axes is doing 2 things. You know, it's got time and what do you call it?
Money.
I'm sorry.
Money.
No, time and what do you call it? The manufacturing and mining and retail and wholesale. You know, the different kinds of industries, and one what do you call it? Ordinator abscissa can't have 2 things. It's a whole complicated thing. So getting back to Dan Klein, he keeps wanting to debate me in person, which, you know, as I say, I'm willing to do, but tell him to go write an article, for God's sakes, and say why I'm wrong.
All right.
That's my answer to him.
All right. Yeah. Okay. One final question. You know, this debate, I find the most interesting in my life, because I don't understand. I mean, Donald Trump has more charisma than probably anyone else.
Probably everyone else.
I mean, so I understand why people like him, because he's charming. I mean, who goes during the Republican debate and said, you know, my opponent accused me of having a small penis. I have a big penis. no one does that. And he does that. And so, I mean, what do you think of, and I sort of like Trump, not that I agree with his views. I like Trump for 2 reasons. One, he exposes the democracy for what a joke it is. That a guy who is obviously in it for no other reason than his own ego, who has no very vague policy proposals, the fact that he can win. So I love that he's exposing it as the circus it is. And 2, I like that he's making mincemeat at the people who I hate more than anyone on the planet, and that's pundits and politicians. And so, you know, I sort of enjoy that he does that, and that he rips people to shreds. But what are your thoughts? Why do you think that, you know, Trump is doing so well?
Well, let me introduce this another joke. The Economist was asked, how is your wife? The answer was, compared to what? Okay, well, who are we comparing Donald Trump to? Are we comparing to Bernie, Sanders, Hillary, Rubio, Cruz? I'm a Trumpian. I support Trump. Are we comparing to Ron Paul? Well, then obviously I don't support Trump. Are we comparing him to Gary Johnson? Let's say Gary Johnson wins the Libertarian nomination. Well, obviously Gary Johnson is head and shoulders above him in every which way you can imagine. Why do I like Trump? So forget about minor party candidates. Let's get into realpolitik. We have 5 candidates. I don't think Kasich is going to make it.
Yeah.
So we have 5: Bernie, Hillary, Cruz, Rubio, and our man, the Donald. Well, I think the Donald is better, mainly on foreign policy. Although, give Bernie Sanders. Did I tell you I went to high school with Bernie?
Yeah, wasn't he supposed to debate you? What? How come he's not doing it?
Well, he and I were on the track team together for 4 years, and we were sort of buddies. We'd walk.
Oh, really? I would assume he would say that someone else should run for him, being a socialist.
Well, in those days, maybe he was pretty socialist in those days too. Yeah, he shouldn't have won. He was one of the best runners in the city. He should have slowed down and let me beat him once in a while, because it was unfair. That's magnificent. I'm going to have to mention that to him when I see him next. But Bernie is pretty good on foreign policy. Hillary is a goddamn warmonger.
Right. And so is Rubio. I think Rubio is the worst of the bunch.
Rubio and Cruz are very bad, and Donald is much better. Donald is saying things. Look, we went into what do you call it? Iraq. We screwed up Iraq. We went into Libya. We screwed up Libya. Now they want to go into Syria and screw up Syria. Let's stay out of those wars. Let's Putin fight him if he wants. Okay, but then he said, we're going to make a strong military and we're going to kick everyone's butt. So he's a little contradictory, but at least he has some free enterprise things. Now, obviously, he's a little weak on foreign trade, slightly weak on. I'm sorry?
That's putting it very kindly.
Yes. He's a protectionist and libertarians aren't. But I think that along with Bob Higgs and Murray Rothbard, that of the 3 things, foreign policy, economic policy, and personal liberties, foreign policy is the most important because foreign policy determines everything else. Right. And Donald is head and shoulders over Rubio and Cruz on foreign policy. So what I'd like to see is Trump beat Rubio and Cruz and Bernie beat Hillary. And he might beat her if she's in jail. Might beat her anyway. Yeah, and then I'd like to see a Donald Trump versus Bernie. And then I'd favor Donald because Donald isn't crazy on economics, whereas Bernie is, a raving lunatic.
My own view actually is that I sort of enjoy Donald Trump more than Bernie Sanders, and I think Bernie Sanders is pretty insincere. But I actually think Bernie Sanders is better because he's better on civil liberties than Trump, and all his crazy economic views would face so much gridlock it wouldn't get passed anyway. Right. So I think yes. His economic views are horrible, but good luck implementing them.
Well, look,
right? The president only has so much power.
I supported my man Barack Obama in 2008 against McCain, and I supported my man Barack Obama against Mitt Romney in 2012 because I thought that McCain was going to absolutely nuke somebody, and Mitt Romney wanted to have a war with China of all places, whereas Barack Obama, give the devil his due. He's a reluctant warrior. He hasn't dropped any atom bombs on anyone. I mean, it's a low bar, but still, McCain might not have passed that low bar. McCain was a maniac. So, I think we should have a debate between libertarians as to who is more libertarian, Donald or Bernie. I'm leaning toward Donald, but I'm open. I'm open to a Bernie candidacy, mainly on foreign policy and personal liberty. Well, personal liberty is not that good because he doesn't want to have any discrimination against anyone, and that's part of personal liberties. But at least, he probably legalized marijuana and maybe even cocaine or something.
Yeah. So, I don't know if he'd legalize cocaine. I think they should, legalize all drugs. And I mean, first of all, a lot of forget even from the libertarian aspect. The worst drugs are all legal. Alcohol is far worse than marijuana and psilocybin mushrooms and acid. Prescription pills. I mean, they're going to give kids Oxycontin, but you're not going to give a cancer patient marijuana. That's nuts.
Well, look, Bernie would probably legalize everything and make the government provide it.
That's actually a great way to reduce drug use. Well, if government's going to give me this crap, I don't know if I want it.
That's right. Look, if the government were in charge of creating sand in the Sahara, they'd run out of sand. So, Dan,
right.
I've got to get off. I gave you an hour. It's always a pleasure, and maybe in a month we'll do it again.
Sounds good.
Take care.
You too. Bye.